Los Angeles, but the
Well, I mean,
Lakers
again, the
may say
Lakers can
Los
say what
Angeles.
they want. I think the two teams that have the best argument for that are, well, three. I would say Houston, I would say Denver, and I would say the team that has the best record in the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons, I think are the three teams that have the best argument. I certainly think that you would have to put Detroit at minimum over the Magic right now, especially in light of we'll see what happens with Jalen Suggs, but he did not look very good leaving the arena after hurting his hip in that game. But I think the Knicks at least have an argument to be in that conversation. And certainly, the Spurs have been awfully good without Victor. And now that Victor is back, I wouldn't say it was as good as the Rockets Thunder game that McMahon was at on opening night, which I think will be the game of the year all the way through. However, it was a hell of a game, hell of an atmosphere. Seeing Victor come back, going up against Chet, which is you laid out a few years ago, Brian, with your two discoveries. They do not like each other at all, and that was evident in the way this game played out. And the Spurs were awfully happy to get that win. And while the Thunder, McMahon and I witnessed after the game, were in a perfectly fine mood and realistically understand where they're at as 24-2, they were not thrilled to let that one get away. And I think, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I thought, had a perfect response to it, saying, this is like when you fail a test in school and you get to retake the test right away because they're going to see the Spurs a couple more times in the next couple of weeks. And I
Christmas
suspect
Day.
the Thunder are going to be ready for those games.
They got a home and home the 23rd and Christmas Day.
That's right.
I mean, if you needed any more, it's not 100%. The way the league is this year and the way the matchups are. I know that there's like a featured game, but because there's football, sometimes it's not as like it used to be. I'm telling you, like, how about Spurs Thunder on Christmas Day? Like, great scheduling.
And how about Spurs Thunder for the next decade? And that's what we've got a chance to have here is a rivalry. And look, the Thunder are going to be a dominant team for a long time. For the health of the league, you need some real challengers, some real rivals. And this has got that kind of potential. And this was, for the Thunder, look, nobody over there is sweating being 24-2. So, oh my gosh, we lost. Okay. They didn't want to lose the game, but they're not, they'll study the tape, learn from it, blah, blah, blah. For the Spurs, though, this was a real chance to kind of make a statement of, hey, we're here. You better take us seriously. And they've got a chance to be a force for a long, long time to come because it's not just Victor Wembanyama, as they proved going 9-3 without him. Those young guards, man, those guys, Victor's not the only great defensive player on that roster. Victor's not the only gamer on that roster. Now, Victor has a nice little French accent, so it comes across a little bit, classy, I guess you could say, but he's got a little troll in him.
I wouldn't say a little.
Yeah.
And he said some more stuff just in the last few days.
Yeah. And he left a lot of room for interpretation, but when he paused and said, Bontemps, you asked the question, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So
I asked Victor Wembanyama, how much fun was it to get back on the court after a very long wait? You've been chomping at the bit to play, and to do so on this stage against this team and against a guy in Chet you've had a lot of battles with in the past. And I mentioned Chet on purpose because I was hoping it would lead to a decent answer. And Victor, in his way, delivered a decent answer. And people have probably seen bits and pieces of it by now, but I would like to read the answer because the end of it in particular was a very good answer. He goes, "Oh, you can't imagine. It's just incredible. I kept asking these guys for the last 12 games, just get better and do some beautiful things, and I just wanted to be a part of it. I'm glad that we can still do it when I'm here. I'm happy with that, of course, but I'm just glad to be part of something that's growing to be so beautiful, so pure and ethical basketball."
Pure and ethical basketball.
Which you could take as just he likes the way the Spurs are playing. You could also take it as a jab at his arch rival and the team that will be their arch rivals, I think, for a while, along with, by the way, we're talking a lot about Spurs Thunder, and that's going to be a great rivalry. We were talking about this at lunch with Corleone. The Rockets are also a team with a bunch of young studs and are going to be awesome for a long time. And then, by the way, you've got Cooper Flagg in Dallas, where if they can get their act together around him, like, yes, they've got a lot of catching up to do, but that's a pretty nice place to start, too. Like,
sounds like an I-35 corridor situation.
I mean, just the whole Texas Triangle Plus is going to be an unbelievable possible epicenter
McMahon
of
has
the league
so
for a while.
many 36-minute flights in his future.
Hey, it's like 42 to Houston.
He's going to be adding up segments like crazy. It's just awesome, though.
I mean, I made a. You guys will make fun of me. You can make. I mean, Bontemps can make fun of me on this. I'm opening myself up for mockery with what I'm about to say. Okay.
You're good at that.
I viewed what I did this weekend as a pilgrimage. I viewed going to see the first game between Chet and Victor as a pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Because
you had to be there for your discoveries. You had to make sure you announced to the world that you discovered these two guys who were drafted first.
There's a difference between becoming familiar with and investigating and discovering, and that's But I felt from day one, and it's probably one of the most energizing moments I've had in the last 10 years in the NBA, was the first quarter or the first half that those two guys played, and what they said about each other after the game or didn't say, and their interaction that they had after the game. And I always remember it, and I would love it if this is just the beginning of many. Although I certainly am not taking anything off the table for any of the other challengers in the West, particularly Denver and particularly Houston.
Well, listen, the other teams are still going to be there, but these guys, assuming health, these teams are going to be butting heads for a long, long, long time.
Yeah, assuming health, Chet Holmgren is going to, I believe and hope, be a big part of USA basketball. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the things that is upset him, not upset, but is something that he wants to get over in his career. He's lost now to the Americans twice in gold medal games. He's only 21, 22, but it's happened twice, and he's
and the real genesis of the rivalry with those two guys is that under-19 championship game in the World Cup 4 years ago, where ironically Kenny Lofton, who's a guy who has bounced around as a two-way, was really the star of the game for Team USA, a 6'7" cinder block of a guy, helped them get that win down the stretch.
And that is actually interesting to point out, because down the stretch of this game with Oklahoma City, the Thunder did something that we've seen them do before, and I think we'll see them do again, which is they didn't use Holmgren always on Victor. They used
Chet
Alex
very
Cruz.
Rarely guarded Victor one-on-one. That's the thing. As much as we're talking about these two guys as a matchup, it's really not that much of a matchup. And a lot of teams are using the bigger, stronger wings. In this case, J-Dub or Alex Caruso, and then sending bodies at Victor. And even when Victor was playing great in the first half, like every time he put it on the floor, it was like, it was like a ball carrier trying to hit the hole. Like the defense was swarming him. Chet didn't guard him a whole lot. Chet doesn't take the toughest individual assignment very often, especially when Hartenstein's healthy, because he's just so devastating as a help defender. That's where he's just an absolute dominant force defensively. Now, Victor did guard Chet a little bit more, and at one time in particular, Chet was very determined to score on him and very unsuccessful doing so. It was returned to sender with some emphasis. But yeah, it's that individual rivalry is a lot of fun, but they're not out there playing one-on-one against each other very much at all.
Yeah, and I actually think that the other direction, I was talking to some scouts, and look, I want to be clear here, again, before I say this, because it's not like anybody's shutting him down, but in recent games, some of the strategy, I think Phoenix did it, Minnesota did it, and
the Lakers.
I'm talking about defense on Shea.
Oh, on Shea. Okay, I thought you were talking about
pivoting there. Sorry. So we talk about the defense on Victor. I was talking to some scouts, and they said that the book right now on Shea, not that it shuts him down, to be clear, despite the fact that Shea is an expert at drawing fouls, is to play with increased physicality, even if that means putting a shorter defender on him, because teams try to put length on him because he's so tremendous at shooting. And this was definitely the strategy for Stephon Castle, who, especially late in the game, there was the one possession where Castle was on Shea, and Shea couldn't, really down the stretch, I would say in general, Shea couldn't get to his spots, which one of the things about Shea's game is that his ability to get to his spot no matter what and do it at his speed and his tempo.
Well, the possession you're talking about, to be clear, was the Thunder got the ball down 4 with 38 seconds to go, prime opportunity to go for a 2-for-1, and Shea was trying to get the 2-for-1 and trying to get into the paint, and it just took him 14 seconds to do so. And so by the time Chet got the ball at the rim and ended up getting fouled by Victor, they were down to, I think there was 24-3 on the clock. And so their chance to get a 2-for-1 went away, which is where we got into the annoying, back and forth intentional foul game for the final 24 seconds. But that was all generated by the Spurs perimeter defense not letting Shea get to a shot with 31 or 32 on the clock to give them a chance to just play defense one time and have a chance to tie or win the game.
And the Thunder felt like they got too stagnant offensively. They felt like they didn't move the ball around. They didn't move. There's
a lot of individual isolation, ugly possessions for them.
And they're usually a great ball moving team, even though Shea's obviously one of, if not the best one-on-one scorer in the league right now. But they felt like you got to make Victor move. So it's not even making the shell move. It's making the best rim protector maybe that we've ever seen move. Yep. They felt like he was able to kind of plant himself near the basket way too easily. But again, like the Spurs have some dudes on the perimeter defensively. Stephon Castle, as much as we've talked about Amin Thompson, Stephon Castle's that type of defensive talent. Plus, he's a guy who can go to LA and give you 30. Dylan Harper has a chance to be a really, really good defender. I mean, he is a big, physical guard who wants to defend, who cares about that. It's not Victor Wembanyama is not the only reason that the Spurs are an elite defensive team. He's the primary reason, but he's got some dudes with him that are really, really good on that end of the floor.
Well, I told McMahon and Mike this last night during the game. I hadn't seen the Spurs play in person in a while because they haven't been in the Northeast this year. Last year, most of the year, they were without Victor. They're a massive team across the board. Like, all their guards are big. De'Aaron Fox might be the smallest guy they play, and he's 6'4" and long. Dylan Harper's a big guard. Castle's a big guard. Devin Vassell is a big wing. Champagne's a big wing. Yep. Harrison Barnes has obviously been, a long-standing stretch for it. Keldon Johnson is a bigger wing. Like every guy Cornette's obviously a center, but I'm talking about the perimeter.
They play him.
Guys.
They play him with Victor sometimes.
By the way, I did clarify with Luke Cornette the celebration when he rejected. Was that in Charlotte when he had the game-saving swat and he said that was definitely Vince Carter, not Usain Bolt, is what he was trying to emulate.
I can't remember if it was Charlotte or Orlando. Might have been in Orlando.
Might have been Orlando.
Either way. But yeah, like they're just a big physical team across the board. Like we think about the Thunder and how physical they are on the perimeter with their guards and how they get into people defensively. But like you watch the Spurs when they're out there and like Shea's going up against a bunch of guys that are the same size as him, which isn't usually the case across the board. There's not an obvious guy for him to go at. And it was awfully impressive to watch. I joked with a couple of the Spurs guys yesterday when I saw him because I hadn't seen him in a while. I was like, hey, look, guys, like I was excited for what you guys are going to be this year. I didn't think you were going to be anywhere near this good. McMahon's obviously going to win this bet in a rout. And I mean, it's fair to talk about them. Like they're a legitimate, especially if Victor can stay on the court. They're one of the 4 best teams, I think, in the West. I think it's clearly the Spurs in some order, the Thunder obviously first, and then I would probably have the Spurs behind the Rockets and Nuggets, but if you told me the Spurs end up in the top 3 if Victor stays on the court, like the way these guys have developed, it's not a surprise at all.
Yeah, which is why I think for Christmas Day, so that'll be the third time they see each other. Hopefully everyone stays healthy for that stretch. And, you know, as we're talking about this, Victor didn't start this game and only played 20 minutes.
21,
So-
but yes. And,
so
and
while
they
you-
sat him the first 15.
And Isaiah
so they could
Hartenstein
play him.
obviously is also coming back from a minutes limit on the other
Well,
side.
and that's
Not
what's
as
crazy.
impactful as Victor, but still.
First time the Thunder had their starting 5 since Game 7 of the Finals, and the first time that San Antonio had their core group together. When you talk about Harper, Fox, Castle, and Wemby all
Friday
together.
was their first practice together all season.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just wild.
so I would love to see 2 games in a couple weeks here, 2, whatever it is, 10, 12 days, to watch how that develops. I'd love to see that. Let's talk about their opponent coming up, because